Almost ready.
Somebody doesn't. Somebody doesn't.
Yeah. Maybe.
So will you move?
There it is. There it is.
There we are. All right. Let's go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Candioi County Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. First item, please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and also to the folks who are watching us, catching us on YouTube. First item is approval of the agenda. We do have one thing that we would like to add very briefly, and that's a update from our Emergency Services Director, Ace Bonema, in regards to the recent flooding here in Candioi County. With that addition, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves. Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I do have a question.
Uh,
Where is that going to be placed on the agenda?
As soon as we're done with the consent agenda.
Got it.
All right, we have a second by Commissioner Emdek. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And then we have the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the June 17th, 2025 County Board legal minutes, approval of the auditor's warrants and claims, approval of an update to the Candioi County fee schedule, and approval of the June 17th, 2025 closed session minutes. Do any commissioners wish to pull any of these four items off of the consent agenda? Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion for approval.
Also move.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Berg seconds. Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. At this time, we will have our Emergency Management Director, Ace Bonema, come up and give us an update. Ace, good morning. I imagine you've been busy.
It has been busy. And good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm Ace Bonema, the Emergency Management Director. June 13 seems like a long time ago, but our county is still dealing with the impacts of the flooding. And speaking with Chad down at Big Candy Park West, water's still rising. And we're seeing impacts in other places as well. Several county departments, cities, and townships met yesterday with Homeland Security Emergency Management to look at our disaster assistance request that we'll be submitting to the state. As I reported to you back at the June 17th board meeting, our threshold for qualifying for state assistance is a little more than 103,000. Our estimates from yesterday's meeting for public infrastructure are around 1.4 million. We're hoping the state will reimburse up to 75%, which would be over $1 million for us. So we've started the paperwork. It's a process, but I think with those numbers, you can see that it's worth our effort. There are also time parameters with the duration of the storm. So we may be looking at additional damages from the continued rain that we started receiving again on June 25th. As far as help for individuals, we initially set up our emergency management hotline, trying to deal with needs where we could. This is now transitioned to something called the Crisis Cleanup Line. Crisis Cleanup is a volunteer organization that works with Minnesota Volunteers Active in Disaster. Here, organizations such as the Red Cross, Salvation Army can claim jobs basically based on needs, and people needing assistance can call that crisis cleanup number. The number is 320-270-3766. You can also call emergency management at 320-235-5133. The county has placed sandbags and sand at the Wilmer Community Center and at Big County Park West. We ran out of sandbags that we had stockpiled in the county, but with some help from some local businesses and neighboring counties, they got us some more and we're sitting okay. We've activated our long-term recovery team. This consists of folks like Sarah Carlson with the Wilmer Community Foundation, Deb Brandt with the UCAP, James Miller with the Chamber. We're planning on a MARC, and a MARC is a multi-agency resource center. This is where agencies can come together, talk to the people can come in, tell them their needs, what they need help with, and we can try and match them with an organization that can help them. Unfortunately, a lot of times the response is just that sometimes it stinks being a homeowner, in my case too, water in the basement, you know, and we aren't able to help everybody rip out their carpet and refurnish, but we are trying to meet those with the greatest need in the community. So some folks had been forced out of their homes, especially in the Raymond area. We got them set up with some hotels, again, through Salvation Army and Red Cross. Still dealing with rising water, and we'll get through the disaster, and it's a process. There are a lot of people to thank, other than those mentioned, the emergency management staff, Mel, Todd, and Austin, and the crew at Public Works, Gary Gear and his staff at the landfill, Chad at Big Candy West, the list goes on and on. But at this point, I'll just stand by for questions.
Ace, I'm told that that this event is, and these water levels are approaching, the term was used, historic levels for Candiota County. Can you give us some sense of totals or anything like that? And yeah, I mean, I'm sure you haven't seen this before, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen it before. I've heard, I think Mellis said has probably more data on the lakes, that it's the worst that he's seen. And to be honest, some of those things we're still in disaster mode and haven't gotten to laying everything out on the map yet, so.
If I may, Ace, Mel, and I kind of are prepping for a July 17th board presentation. We're getting some drone footage of the lakes. We're going to get some water levels. Mel's team is working on that. We'll verify with DNR and kind of collaborate with any resources that we have. Because we are seeing some historic water levels throughout the county. Maybe some that we experienced 30, 40 years ago down in the southern part of the county. But maybe some historic levels on the northern part for those lakes. And so we're kind of gathering some of that information, and we'll have more of a board presentation with some final numbers at the July 17th meeting.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How long can, like, say it's not slowing down at all, the rain, the way it looks like. How long can this go on? Can this be part of that emergency that we can get funding for because it impacts the same area and creates more damage?
There's certain dates that a storm can only last so many days, and then if there's a couple days of sunshine in between, then basically it's another event. So if we can show the damages, like for that next event, any culverts that may have been damaged afterwards, otherwise they would tie to that initial event. So it's kind of a paperwork thing with the state, making sure you have the proof that you need, pictures, all the documentation. It's not just as easy as saying, hey, give me some money. So we've got to work for it.
Mr. Chair, may I just follow up? Just
Go ahead.
make one more comment. As I mentioned to you earlier, that you're doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
Emergency management, this is one of those emergencies that go on, and so much paperwork and so many little details to keep track of. But such an important job you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson.
Yep, I just want to say thank you to you and the whole team that was all helping this weekend, because I was getting a lot of calls, and whenever I'd text you guys, I didn't want to call on the weekend, but I'd send a text, and that way you could respond whenever you had time. And pretty much everybody said, yep, we're on that, or we're looking into that, or we will look into that. And so everything was being taken care of, even though I was getting a lot of calls. You guys were on top of it, so thanks to everybody that was helping out this weekend. So.
Emergency management's a department of three, and we appreciate the county supporting emergency management, but there's a lot of people that I'm picking up the phone, I'm calling Mel, and so it's a lot of just coordinating, so we appreciate all the help.
Any other questions for Ace? All right, well, thank you so much
you.
for the update, and we'll look forward to the presentation on the 17th. Thank you so much. At this time, we will move to a proclamation. Tammy Jo Lieberg, Community Corrections Director. Dr. Lieberg, good morning.
Good morning. Tammy Jo Lieberg, Community Corrections Director for Candy, Ohio County, here this morning. I'm going to give a brief presentation about an overview of our Community Corrections Department, and then talk about the proclamation for July 20th and 26th for Probation and Parole Officer Week. For July is Probation and Parole Officer Week. So I'll start with the presentation, and then we'll talk about that, the proclamation after that. So if I can get up on the board, or there we go. Thank you. So, Candy, Ohio Community Corrections, our primary goals are to promote public safety, adhere to evidence-based practices, and strive for impartial accountability and respect individual potential and reduce recidivism. When we talk about community corrections, really what we're talking about is public safety across Candy, Ohio County. Community corrections touches almost every aspect of public safety, from the start of an arrest all the way through the prison system, and when somebody comes back out on the other side. This map shows the map of the 3 delivery systems of community corrections in the state of Minnesota. I have to say it's a little outdated. We haven't updated it lately because, as our county board knows, but many other people don't, there's been a lot of shifting in the state of Minnesota as many counties are changing to community corrections and moving mostly away from CPO and DOC. So right now, this map shows it's partially, kind of balanced, a little green, blue, and orange. It's actually switching more over towards systems like ours, CCA. Actually, in the next year, 7 more counties are switching to CCA. So they've decided not to update the map until we get a little more stable, because everybody's switching right at the moment. Actually, we have 2 counties switching in July and 3 in October, and then 3 more in January. So it's kind of a big shift right now because of the way of the climate and what people are. The purpose of having 3 delivery systems, though, is so that every county can have that personal choice, right? So that we have that option of whatever is best for that county is what that county can choose. And Candy, Ohio has always chose to be a community corrections county, which means as community corrections, we supervise all cases in our county, from the juveniles all the way up to supervised release, or what most people call parole, coming into our counties. This is just an org chart showing the different units in our office, from high and medium supervision, specialized supervision. We have mental health and drug court. We have sex offender supervision. We have a pretrial unit, group supervision. We have a pre-sentence unit, pretrial unit, and community work service programs. We also have our community support and law enforcement liaison. So I'm going to talk, like I said, in general. A lot of times I come before you and bring specific units so that we have an idea that we can talk a little bit more in depth about the different types of services that we provide to the county. Today we're going to talk more in general and talk about all of the services across the board that we have. And part of that is just showing how, like I said, we touch almost every case from beginning to end, and kind of just to show that continuum of how that works. As we talk about pretrial supervision is where we kind of start. The minute somebody's arrested in our county, we start with that pretrial supervision, or we start with a bail study. In my office, typically some mornings we have our pretrial supervision unit can start as early as 6 a.m. depending on how many people were arrested the night before, to start with a bail study. To determine what types of risk factors we're going to look at to provide to the court and the judges to see if they should be released, what types of conditions might be the court should give them as part of that risk assessment. Because we want to get those individuals to court as fast as possible, we start early, because those reports have to be to court preferably by 9 or 10 a.m. in the morning. And if there's a large amount of arrests the night before, that's why we have to start early. We have to look at their criminal history, where they've lived, those types of things. And that takes a lot of effort sometimes, if it's across a national level of where that criminal history is looked at, to collect that information. information. Pretrial supervision, then, if they're released from the jail, we're looking at their conditions of pretrial supervision. That means looking at where they live, trying to make sure that they show back up at court, make sure that they follow any conditions of the court, which might be not using drugs or alcohol, not having contact with victims, other types of conditions that might be. In 2024, you can see that we supervised 746 pretrial cases. That's not individuals, that's cases. That actually ended up being about 400 individuals, but 746 felony pretrial cases of supervision, 341 gross misdemeanors, and 193 misdemeanors. Looking at different things. Sometimes that individual might be on electronic monitoring. Sometimes it's looking at UAs. Sometimes they're checking into our office. But what we're really looking at is how do we make sure that they don't commit new crimes during the period of time between they're released from jail and when they go to trial. But we always have to remember in these cases during pretrial, we're innocent until proven guilty. So that those are the cases that, we have to also make sure that we're managing the fact that their rights aren't, they're considering those rights. Then after at that time, once they either are found guilty or they've pled guilty, we look at probation supervision. Probation supervision is different. That's when we're looking at monitoring their compliance with court and accountability. But we also need to look at their risk and needs assessment and assessing responsivity factors, mental health, dealing with crisis, and looking at evidence-based programs to reduce recidivism. That's the majority of where our focus is, and looking at long-term community safety. How do we impact public safety through reducing recidivism, changing criminal behavior, helping people change the behavior so that they do not commit new offenses in the future? And so that's where a lot of our focus is when you look at the programs that we have in our office. A next part of our supervision is supervised release and what a lot of people consider parole. That's if somebody actually goes to prison. When they come back out, we have supervised release or parole. And a lot of times when somebody's coming back out, depending on how long that parole sentence or that prison sentence was, we're looking at a release investigation. We can do end of sentence reviews. That's when, especially in a longer prison sentence, if somebody has a murder charge or a significant prison sentence, sometimes 15, 20 years, we may have to complete a full report that goes to a parole board to determine what the impact on a victim might be if they're released, what the impact to the community is. And you can imagine after a 20, 25-year sentence, sometimes it's quite difficult to find victims. Sometimes it's difficult to find even officers that may have worked with the case because at that time, people have moved on. But we, at the same time, are also addressing community safety, looking at evidence-based programs, and again, looking at those transitions into the community in those cases of how do we best protect the public, holding people accountable, and addressing those changes as they come back into the community. Here you can see we, during our total clients on adult clients on supervision over the years in 2024 on supervised probation, we supervised 1,133 people in 2024. So there's quite a significant number of people under some type of level of probation supervision each year, but it's remained fairly stable over the last couple of years. We also have our community work service program. This is where we, individuals are allowed to work off fines and fees through our community work service program. We do a variety of different work through oil changes for county vehicles. We can do constructions projects. We have a garden where we donate the food to the food shelf. We have a variety of projects that either provide work at no cost to the county, nonprofit agencies. We've built fences, decks for different projects in the county, fish houses, the camper cabins, a variety of projects. It allows for the individuals to earn valuable work skills, give back to the community, and at the same time, gives us work that we can have being done in the community. Some of the other things that our office does is investigations and reports. We have many, many reports. This is what our probation officers probably hate like least about their jobs, like everybody else, is the reports we got to write. But pre-sentence investigations, predispositional reports, those are the juvenile version, parole investigations, adjustment reports, probation violations, transfer investigations in-state from county to county or interstate. If somebody is moving out of state, we have to, or into our state from another county, we have to do those investigations. Victim impact statements, restitution determinations, other investigations, extended juvenile jurisdiction certifications, domestic abuse and assessments. As part of those, we do interviews with the offender. We collect information from law enforcement, corrections agencies, victim services, mental health, and treatment courts. We collect collateral information from family members and other areas. So they can be quite extensive work trying to collect that information. We do lots of reports you can see for bail evaluations, pre-sentence investigations, domestic assessments, and violations each year. For a variety of, that are submitted to the courts.
Dr. Lieberg, I was looking at this chart and I see that the number of bail evaluations has drastically decreased over that 5-year term.
Yes, and part of that is due to statutory changes that they've reduced what types of offenses we need to do bail evaluations on at this time.
Well, you'll take a win like that.
Yes, it
over
is.
more paperwork.
It is.
Okay. Go ahead.
But you can also see that we've increased the pre-sentence investigations, and I would tell you that pre-sentence investigations actually take more time. And an enormous, and pre-sentence investigations can range from 5 to 20 pages, depending on the pre-sentence investigation, and can range usually around 6 to 10 hours worth of work. Addressing public safety, you can see we do several different things when we're looking at evidence-based practices. We're assessing the drivers of criminality. We supervise the court orders and holding people accountable. We develop individuals with individuals to manage their risk levels and assist mental health and crisis situations. And we use restorative justice to assist victims in the community. We're using those evidence-based practices to try and address how to change their behaviors going forward in the community. We're using those evidence-based practices. We've used it several times talking to you in the past. We kind of delve into them more in depth, but this is just a quick review of, we use professional alliance, motivational interviewing, risk assessment, case planning, and our cognitive behavioral programs. And our cognitive behavioral programs that we talk about, they reduce recidivism, and they've shown through research to reduce recidivism, especially if we use a variety of interpersonal skills and behavioral interventions. Many of you have had the opportunity to go to our graduations and see different examples of some of the activities that we're able to do. By addressing those criminogenic needs, we have the ability to reduce recidivism, change criminal behavior, and protect the public by reducing victims. And so that's the primary focus of our long-term public safety.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on your comment about assisting individuals with mental health concerns. Is that a significant number? And can you comment a little bit more on that?
I sure can. So we have a mental health unit in the probation office. But we have actually 2 separate types of mental health units in the probation office, one dealing with more of our pretrial unit and one dealing with our cases on supervision. But almost everybody we have on probation has some type of mental illness or type of issues that they're dealing with mental illness. Most people who are commit crimes, they don't want to be in trouble. I mean, that's one of the things that we got to remember. It has to do with people who have they've made a bad choice. There have been issues going on in their lives. Something's occurred. But chemical dependency and mental illness are a lot of the drivers that start with responsivity issues that kind of come about. And then other things like we talk about antisocial behaviors, antisocial peers, antisocial thinking. Those are some things that also contribute in a high level to what causes crime. And so we're trying to use those things as a way to address that. And through addressing the mental illness at the same time, we're providing assistance for them.
Commissioner Imdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions. One's a little unrelated. You mentioned the drivers of causing people to commit crimes and violate law. What about adverse childhood experiences?
Adverse childhood experiences are a cause, but that's where we start, right? When we're talking about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, those are things like when we start talking about static, actually even, you have perfect timing. When we talk about static and dynamic risk factors, we're talking about static are things we can't change, okay? Static risk factors are things like antisocial history, which might be ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. I can't go back and change what happened in their childhood. What we can change to address public safety are their dynamic risk factors, things like their attitudes and thinking behaviors right now. And so those might be their static risk factors that we can identify as a risk factor, but we can't change that. So in probation, we really try and concentrate on what those dynamic factors are right today, because we're looking forward. How do we reduce their risk factors in the future so that they don't hurt people in the future?
Thank you. Were you done with the presentation? Because this question isn't really related to.
I am almost. I'm just
I'll
going to
let you
just
finish them
address.
before I answer my question.
Okay,
Or ask my
I'll just
question.
tell you real quickly, we talk about our different cognitive skills programs, and the ones that like we talked about, you guys can, we have graduation programs and different things you can attend, but we have our Introduction to COG, which we have at the jail. We have Thinking for a Change. We have our Domestic Violence Treatment Program, our Decision Points, Social Skills, Sex Offender Treatment, and Women's Moving On program. We also have our community engagement programs that provide different types of pro-social skills in the community that even like right now, we're scheduling things like helping people learn how to take care of their cars. Because of ACEs and many other things, they've never had those opportunities. They haven't had somebody to help them figure out how to take care of their car and do things like changing windshield wipers. We're looking at how do we engage them in community support systems and have pro-social activities outside of going out and drinking and getting in trouble. And so how do we engage them in behaviors and things that are positive influences in their lives, or are a large part of and making positive choices. So, and here is my staff. So my presentation is over. I am happy to stand for questions, and then I have my proclamation after that.
Commissioner Imdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Early in your presentation, you said there are 7, I believe, counties that are moving over to the community corrections
That is correct.
system. When they move over to the system, does the funding move with them? And what is causing that move?
Okay.
I know I've been part of going to CCA MACAC for several years, and they always talk about, okay, maybe next year we're going to get somebody else. Now all of a sudden, there's a pretty big move.
So several years ago, we passed, as part of our MACAC and AMC, we worked very, very hard on increasing funding for corrections. We were not successful in getting full funding as we worked even this year to try and get our funding up to the full funding formula. We were not successful because of the funding deficits that we're still facing. But we were able to get a single funding formula 3 years ago, which increased our funding in Kandiyohi County significantly. Still not to the level. The state is still not meeting its needs or not meeting its obligations. But we were able to increase the funding significantly from where it was. And what has happened, because the state has increased where it was, many counties have made the determination with that increase in funding that they feel that they are better suited to meet the needs of their counties than the state was. In some counties, they still feel that their state areas are still being able to provide the services, but many areas feel that their county community corrections agencies provide better services. They meet the needs of their counties at a local level with the funding that's available.
And that funding does
That funding does transfer, yes. So it's based, the funding is now based on the work that's provided, not, in the past, it was kind of based on a pass-through dollars of what the Department of Corrections determined was appropriate, and now it's based on what the work is provided. And every county is funded exactly the same, regardless of what the Department of Corrections determines.
Not the same amount, the same formula.
Same formula.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Berg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really a comment. Commissioner Emdek and myself serve on your advisory committee for the public's information. But the big changes, I think, has a lot to do with the legislative changes that took place. And just really a shout out to your department and especially you for those changes and being instrumental in helping make that all happen. So that's a good
Thank
deal.
you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to say thanks for what you guys do. It's not always easy doing your job, I'm sure, so thank you.
All right, with that,
I'll read
you
my
have a proclamation?
I'll read my
Yes.
proclamation then, and we'll get on. Okay, so the County of Candy, Ojai, pretrial probation and supervised release supervision week, Heroes Behind the Mission, July 20th through 26th, 2025. Whereas community corrections is an essential part of the justice system. Whereas probation officers and community corrections professionals uphold the law with dignity while recognizing the right of the public to be safeguarded from criminal activity. And whereas probation officers and community corrections professionals are responsible for supervising adult and juvenile offenders in the community. Whereas probation officers and community corrections professionals are trained professionals who provide services and referrals for offenders. Whereas probation officers and community corrections professionals work in partnership with community corrections agencies and groups. Whereas probation officers and community corrections professionals promote prevention, intervention, and advocacy. Whereas probation officers and community corrections professionals provide services, support, and protection for victims. Whereas probation officers and community corrections professionals advocate community and restorative justice. Whereas probation officers and community corrections professionals are a true force for positive change in their communities. Now therefore, be it resolved that Candy Ojai County Board does hereby proclaim July 20th through the 26th, 2025 as pretrial probation and parole supervision week, and encourage all citizens to honor these probation officers and community corrections professionals and to recognize their achievements. Signed this first day of July 2025.
All right, would someone like to move the proclamation?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Emdek moves. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
And I
Thank
do-
you so much. Go ahead.
I do have a few of my probation officers in the back of the room, if they would stand up and introduce themselves.
Mike Rock. Jay Bogley.
Allison Deal, Mary Jo DiCapolino, Caitlin Wilder.
So that's what I got. Everybody else is in meetings or court.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for being here today, and thank you so much. And we're more than happy to provide, do you need this, or you need
Nope, you
this?
keep that for now.
All right. All right, we have that, and thank you so much again, and
Thank
we'll
you.
release you to go on with the rest of your day. At this time, we'll have Caroline Kahn presenting to us in relation to the Family Resource Center initiative. Director Kahn, good morning.
Good morning. You just introduced me, but I'll introduce myself. So Caroline Kahn, Candy Ojai County Health and Human Services Director. This morning, I wanted to provide an update briefly on our FRC project that we brought forth a few months ago related to a grant that we received from the Sauer Family Foundation, and also bring forward a contract to continue the partner that we've identified in that early on in our grant process to get the approval to continue forward with that project. So as a reminder, FRCs are a family resource center model, and Candy Ojai County has begun its process of the explore and assess phase through the Sauer Family Foundation grant. These are, FRCs are a community-based hub of support and services and opportunities for families based on nationally recognized family resource model by the Family Support Network. These models use a multi-generational, strengths-based, and family-centered approach, reflecting on being responsive to community needs and interests and providing a low or no cost to participants to engage with services and supports. FRCs are a community-led model, and they reduce the footprint of government by serving communities while fostering collaboration between local organizations, community, and government. There are over 3,000 FRCs throughout the country in 40 states and the District of Columbia, with the oldest serving families for 30 years in some locations. I also wanted to just, again, provide a brief overview of the potential impact of FRCs. Based on studies in multiple jurisdictions, FRCs have demonstrated a $4.93 social return on investment for every dollar invested, a $3.65 savings for the child welfare system for every dollar invested, and significant gains in economic self-sufficiency, health, and social supports for family functioning and resiliency, child nurturing, and healthy attachment. So moving forward with our FRC project, as I brought forward in our original grant acceptance proposal, is partnering with Creating Communities Consulting. This is a consultant that we've worked with public health in the past, and is a partner that our regional counties are also engaging with. Specifically, Meeker County is a county of similarity to Kandiyohi County, and that we've identified the ability to partner and leverage both of our grant experiences at the same time. In selecting the same partner. This is the same partner that also our 6W our counties are also participating in, so we're hoping to continue to leverage regional impact. So our contract to move forward with Creating Communities would allow them to help continue the supports within the grant project as our results-based accountability and positive community norms project, continuing our community mapping and engagement workshops, standards of quality assessment, the ongoing coaching once our hub and spoke model is put together, and then our community of practice and partner engagement sessions. So as outlined in our grant project originally, moving forward with the ability to finalize that contract and continue the work. We are currently in our data collection. Creating Communities is involved in going over an assessment, and at the end of July, they'll present to a group related to what we found as community assessment for Kandiyohi County. What questions do we know, and what questions do we have left to answer as we continue on in our Explore and Assess phase project? So this morning, I have before you the Creating Communities Consultants contract for approval.
All right, are there any questions for the director? Commissioner Imdek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's several counties, it almost looks like, with the exception of McLeod and Meeker, it's almost District 6 the way it looks. And we are the fiscal agent?
No, everybody, Meeker County has done their own contract, so they have their own grant award that they've received, and then 6W has chosen to work collectively as those counties. And they have their own grant. So everybody has independent grants and then independent contracts with the same partner. So we did strategically try to select the same partner to leverage each other, because we do have shared resources such as Woodlands, Pact for Families, UCAP in certain areas. So we are trying to work as collectively as possible and find cost efficiencies.
Thank you. I understood, as I was reading it, it was probably Kandiyohi was going to be fiscal agent for all of the counties there. So if I may ask a follow-up question?
You may.
So similarly, each county can withdraw from the contract if they see that it doesn't. It's not, if one doesn't sign up, the rest can't sign up either?
Yep, they all have their own independent contracts. Yep.
Commissioner Berg?
Mr. Chair, thank you. First off, I want to commend you to keep this moving forward. I know it's been a couple of years now, or
A couple months.
Couple months,
Right,
no,
so-
since we visited Scott County's Family
Oh, a year,
Resource
yes,
Center.
sorry, yes, a year.
And I think we were all pretty excited at that time, and I know there's been a lot going on behind the scenes, and thank you for your leadership on that and heading in that direction. It's probably too early to tell, because it takes so much time, there's so many details to put together to make this happen, like, for example, with this contract. Is our model going to be still looking at similar to that one at all? Or is it too early to even tell?
It's too early to tell.
Way to tell.
Yep, and that's the partnership with
Yep, that's
Creating
where we're gonna
Communities
get
will
there.
help us
Sure.
come up to that recommendation at the end of this grant project. So just a reminder, a few months ago, we received the Sauer Family Foundation grant to completely fund this exploration process to help build family resiliency. And hopefully, by the end of the next year, we'll be able to bring forward a recommendation of what would fit Candy, Ojai County best and the unique needs within our county to build family resiliency.
Anyone else? All right, the chair will move the approval of the purchase of service contract with Creative Community Consulting LLC. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And Caroline, you're going to stay up there and you see what I did there?
You did.
You're going to talk about the STAY program.
I am. So again, thank you for the opportunity to bring forth another contract. Last year, we brought forward Angela Mateski to talk about the STAY programming that we partner with Lutheran Social Services. This one is a fiscal host contract in which the Candy, Ojai County does act on behalf of the other counties as partnership for these funds that we receive from the state to then be dispensed to Lutheran Social Services to utilize to run their STAY program and help build independent living skills for youth and out-of-home placement. I'm going to just, as a foster parent myself, commend the group. I've had a kiddo go to the STAY program in the past year since the last time, and it's been a transformational experience to see a young youth and out-of-home placement have the experience and opportunity to learn about car maintenance and car insurance and how do you balance a checkbook, and they make a fun experience out of that. Recently, I've also had the opportunity to visit the new Lutheran Social Services Youth Resource Center downtown and watching this new space that they have and the ability that they're able to do the programming in this new space for the STAY project is quite transformational and impactful and inspiring. So I look forward to the ways in which they will continue to elevate services and programs for youth experiencing out-of-home placement. So as you can see, the contract, excuse me, I got my papers turned around, is a continuation of pass-through funds that we receive with our award letter staying the same as last year of the $111,600 and looking to, again, continue that partnership with Lutheran Social Services for the STAY program.
Are there any questions for the director? All right, then I would entertain a motion for approval of the purchase of service agreement with LSS.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Thank you. Commissioner Berg moves. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Discussion. All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Caroline, thank you so much. Thank you. Next item of business is we're going to have Katie Zemer, our Human Resource Director, come to the podium and has a resolution. So, Katie, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Katie Zemer. I'm the Human Resources Director with Candy, Ojai County. I am here regarding Resolution 2025-23. Robbie Brannis was recently promoted to the jail administrator position, and per statute, he is eligible to retain his membership in the Police and Fire Para Plan under the transfer provision, which states that employees that move from one position to another within the same sheriff's department and that governmental unit passes a resolution supporting this would be able to maintain their police and fire membership. Robbie is a licensed peace officer, and he's been employed by the sheriff's office for the past 17 years. So a new hire coming into this position would be under the correctional plan, and the reason for this resolution is because of the differences between the two plans, which include contribution rates, benefit formula, COLA adjustments, and Social Security participation.
All right, and so we have Resolution 2025-23. Is there anyone who would like to move that forward?
I would move Resolution 2025-23.
Thank you, and is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and any discussion, questions? It'll be easy. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will take an 8-minute recess. Okay.
AT, are you ready?
That's what they say at ours too.
Yeah. The Candido County Board of Commissioners are back in session. At this time, we will take up the item landfill potential property presentation and purchase agreement. With us today, Ryan Batten, our landfill supervisor. Ryan, approach the podium and good morning. You have a presentation for us.
Yes, yep, it should be up on the screens there. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Ryan Batten. I'm the landfill superintendent for Candido Ohio County. And we'll just go through this presentation here that'll kind of outline the reasons that we want to purchase the property potentially, and then kind of the benefit that it gives to the county. Chief among those would be to extend our groundwater compliance boundary, which we'll get into a little bit later as we go through the presentation. But
I'm gonna ask you to, speak up just a little bit more there. Yep, thank you so
But
much.
that, extending our groundwater compliance boundary limits our liability in numerous different things and has the potential to save us quite a bit of money, even though there is a significant capital outlay to purchase the property. So we'll get into it here. We'll just start off with the hydrogeology of the site. We've extensively researched the hydrogeology of the whole site, and to the northwest where we have an existing contamination plume. Our research has indicated that there's two distinct plumes from two contamination sources. The one that we're most familiar with is the northwest plume. That emanates from pre-subtitle D waste, pre-regulatory waste that was disposed of between 1970 and 1992. That's predominantly a VOC contaminant plume, vinyl chloride, trichloroethylene, and we'll get into some of those chemical constituents as we move through. The C&D plume, which moves south-southwest, is one that originated in 2009 due to PFAS firefighting foam that was used to extinguish a large C&D fire at that time. So the site itself sits on a geological divide, and there's lenses of clay that affect the groundwater flow, which is why we see that distinct divide between the two different plume directions. Go to the next page here. We've seen exceedances at DMW3, which is our southernmost groundwater monitoring point currently. We've seen exceedances of PFAS and boron, both of which were constituents in that firefighting foam that I spoke of. In that well, exceeding our groundwater intervention limits since 2018. That well is approximately 500 foot south of where the material was disposed of or was injected into the waste. And the well itself sits about 250 feet north of the property boundary, which gives us confidence that contamination is migrated off-site. I mean, we're not dealing with something that is currently on-site. We have a duty to take corrective action because we know that these contaminants have migrated off-site.
Commissioner Imdak.
Thank you. Ryan, as I'm looking at this map, I'm trying to understand. So you show the headwaters of the Shakopee Creek, and then below that it says Nest Lake, Middle Fork, Crow River.
I believe those are watershed boundaries, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it's not the creek itself?
It's not the creek itself, no.
Okay, got it. And then, did I hear you say, and did I read that there's a significant clay area between Plume and the Norston Lake?
Yes, we believe in that this whole site that the county owns is divided geologically between two, what are called geological units. So the northwest unit is different than what's in the southeast. And along that divide is a massive clay till, a glacial clay till. And that kind of creates this barrier, which in geological terms, we refer to it as an aquitard, prevents the flow of groundwater, the migration of groundwater. So groundwater finds a different path, just like surface water does, you know. So it is that clay, and we've actually used that clay to our advantage for construction projects. We've mined clay in the parcels to the west. So we know there's a significant amount of clay in that area. So there's, you know, these clay hummocks, mounds that are, you know, we've not found the bottom of them when we've been digging. So they're inconsistent, but it's consistent enough geologically that we know that there's the barrier between superficial aquifers and deeper aquifers. We've done enough studying to know that, and we're familiar with that geology. So yes, there's a significant amount of clay in that area of the site. And
To the
and you can
southwest of the plume.
to the west, to the westerly direction. And the watershed boundaries kind of illustrate that to some degree too. It maybe doesn't correlate exactly with the subsurface geology, but it does. The surficial geology usually follows the subsurface geology to some degree.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. So if we go to the next page, we'll see a good idea of what corrective action looks like in a traditional sense from what we've done with the northwest plume. We have a pretty good idea about that. We've been dealing with it for 30-plus years, and the timeline here just kind of delineates years since the waste was open and step by step kind of what steps were taken. At that 25-year mark is when a lot of the contamination modeling started, and we're kind of at that point. We're getting close to that point now with our C&D waste. So we're entering into that same type of timeline, but what purchasing the property does for us is it kind of extends that timeline, gives us the opportunity to do more research into natural attenuation, into treatment technologies if it's necessary, those types of things. So hopefully we don't have to get into as intensive of a search as we did with that northwest plume. And the main impetus for that search was the fact that it was off-site. It was affecting property owners. It crosses multiple property boundaries. There's a whole host of different people that are involved and impacted by it. So next page, please. Corrective action groundwater monitoring requires a more intensive and more stringent monitoring of known contaminants. So for phase 1 plume right now, we have 23 corrective action wells. 9 of them are off-site. We monitor those 2 times annually, looking for a whole host of contaminants from VOCs, SVOCs, metals, PFAS, all of those things we monitor for 2 times annually. For our C&D plume right now, we don't have anything in corrective action, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Right now, we just have our standard monitoring wells on the southern boundary of the site. We know we're going to have to do something with those in the very near future here. It's just a matter of how extensive we need to get.
Commissioner Berg and then Commissioner.
Can you expound a little bit more on corrective action? It sounds like a lot of the corrective action is monitoring and putting wells in to monitor.
Yes,
Is that a corrective action then?
that's a portion of corrective action. The first part of
Yeah,
corrective.
so what are the correction actions?
Sure. The first part of any corrective action is going to be doing a study, a full-scale study or a limited study, which is what we're proposing here. And I will talk about that a little bit later too, if you want to hold off until that point. We'll get into that a little bit more in depth, so.
You want to ask your question now, or? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I bring it up now because you talked about the monitoring wells and probably have to put at least a couple more in because things have moved. Has Norstead Lake ever been tested?
Yes, we have.
And what are the result of that?
No PFAS was present in the sampling. We intend to continue testing that. Regardless of what we do, we're going to learn a significant amount about what the groundwater migration looks like in that area. So we can kind of target a couple of areas where it looks like groundwater may potentially interface with surface water, and those would be prime areas for monitoring surface water, points along Norstead Lake. So we do the same thing in the northwest plume. We have certain areas that we monitor where we think groundwater and surface water are interfacing. So we can go to the next one here. This is just a list of the contaminants that we've seen for each plume currently. Vinyl chloride, which is a degradation product of the trichloroethylene, which was the original contaminant in the phase 1 plume, is the primary one of the northwest plume. As you can see, boron and PFAS compounds, of which there are several, are the primary contaminants of the C&D landfill. Okay, we can go to the next one. And this is kind of where we come down to brass tacks. So what do we stand to avoid by acquiring the property in question? Source remediation, which is the only tried and true remedial action that we know would work, which would be digging up the existing waste and disposing of it on top of line space is really the only tested remedial action that we know of at the time. And that would cost us approximately $7 million and loss of line space. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant expense as well. 650,000 cubic yards of line space lost. That's basically a cell's worth of development. So that would be a significant amount of lost revenue as well. That's the only thing we know of right now that would stop the plume from migrating. It would stop the contamination at the source. A full-scale off-site hydrogeostudy study, which is what we would end up doing if we do not purchase the property and extend our groundwater compliance boundary. It involves doing rotosonic boring, sampling groundwater at 5-foot intervals. It'd take probably a couple of years, and we've estimated the cost at about $4.4 million. And then on top of that, we would be looking at installing likely 10 corrective action wells. Each one of those wells costs about $35,000 to install. And then we're also on the hook for about $3,000 per well per year in monitoring costs. So, I mean, we'd be looking at $30,000 per year for the life of the facility that we would be on the hook for monitoring costs. Next slide, please. So how can we reduce our liability, and what benefit does it give the county to outlay this significant amount of capital? Time to enforcement is the big one. Longer timeline before we're forced into remedial action. The MPCA is going to require us to do something since we're confident that the plume is off-site. So the more time we have, the more time we have to let technology improve and decide if it behooves us to do any sort of remedial action, to allow time to study sequestration of the PFAS compounds in the soil, which we've noted in the northwest plume that the PFAS does get sequestered to some point. The transport modeling shows that it's not as transportable as VOCs and the like. So there is some manner of sequestration going on there. The other thing it does is limit the potential for problematic property owner interactions. So there's a lot of uncertainty that comes when you have a new property owner. Properties could get subdivided and developed, especially a nice prime piece of property like that. That would be a worst case scenario. And generally speaking, it's industry standard practice for solid waste facilities to buy out as much of your neighbors as you can, just because a lot of MPCA enforcement action is complaint driven. So you have neighbors, it's unpredictability, it's the potential for complaints. And the MPCA, if they dictate you need to do something, you have to do it. There's no way around it. So they mandate, they don't ask.
Commissioner Berg.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
If you could. At the very bottom then, if I'm understanding you, just to be clear on this, the cost to buy this property, is that the cost estimate? That's 1.8 to 2.6 million? Is that what that is?
That's just the groundwater monitoring cost.
That's
That's based off of the northwest plume, which we probably wouldn't have to have quite as intensive of a groundwater monitoring network to the south. We'd anticipate like somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 corrective action wells, whereas right now there's 23 for the northwest plume. But, you know, the total cost aggregated over a 20-year span for a southern plume, just groundwater install, well install, and monitoring would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million. And that's on top of the research portion of it. That's the actual corrective action portion of it.
So corrective action is really monitoring.
At this point, yes, but it can be remediation as well.
I mean, it
Yes.
sounds like we correct the problem and we still have the problem. We're just,
There's still a problem.
we're
but
just
yes.
watching it move.
There's some threshold where you move from monitoring to remediation. We've
Yeah.
not crossed that point yet. So,
And I suppose it's just a crystal ball if or when.
correct, yeah.
And
We've been fortunate so far that the northwest plume hasn't required us to do any remediation. We believe that most of the VOC contaminants in that northwest plume are interfacing with Shakopee Creek Slough and volatilizing. So We don't believe there's a great risk to human health, but if our groundwater monitoring network shows different contaminants migrating in that direction, that could change as well. So it's something that we're actively monitoring 2 times a year, as I stated before, and we're always on the lookout for any changes that might push us over that threshold. And all this stuff gets submitted to the MPCA hydrogeologist and solid waste program too. So their eyes are on it every time we do a monitoring activity, so that they're seeing it too, and they're on the lookout for the same things that we are.
Commissioner Imdak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we know that it's moving in the coarse material, i.e. the way groundwater moves. We know relatively close the amount of, or the speed at which it's traveling. Do we know the depth that it's at?
We believe right now that it's in the surface aquifer, so it would probably be shallower than 40 feet below ground surface.
And I think Mr. Geary uses the words attenuation, which I think is a fix, or it goes away or whatever. But is there any work being done right now other than just to move the boundaries? And, because it feels like all we'd be doing is kicking the can down the road, for lack of a better term than that, an overused term, that sooner or later, we're gonna still be facing some sort of, what was the other word you used?
Remediation?
Remediation. And it could be the big one that you're talking about.
It could be, yeah.
If we or someone doesn't find an alternative, those of us who farm understand drainage, tile drainage, and it's difficult for me not to think that we couldn't daylight that through tile, drainage tile, and collect it just like you might put water in a county ditch.
I can see that it's just a matter of the millions and millions of gallons that you would be treating on an annual basis. I mean, you got to think along the lines of underground river, you know, it's a untold quantity of water that you would have to treat, which is why we like the extended timeline to compliance, because it gives time for technology to improve. And then, as we talked about, attenuation probably isn't the 100% correct term. Attenuation would infer that the contaminants would dissipate in some regard. Sequestration is what I prefer to use, because that would be basically immobilizing the contaminants in the soil so that they're no longer migrating, so that the leading edge of your plume tapers off to a non-detect on PFAS and boron compounds. So basically, you know you still have contamination in the groundwater, it's just not moving anymore because those particles have become entrained in the subsurface material.
And I might have missed it, but the question regarding, is there anyone working on these kind of things?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we budgeted next year for an NMR study, which is basically like an MRI of the ground. We're going to do a whole plume modeling on that. So that's the first phase. From that, we'll gain some understanding of exactly which direction it's going, kind of the speed at which the groundwater and the contaminants are migrating, and if there's any potential impact to surface waters. If there is a potential impact to surface waters, that could accelerate our remedial action plan to something like putting pond skimmers on. This is all just hypothetical right now. You know, if you would see an impact to surface waters, generally PFAS would create a phase on top of the water, so you'd be able to potentially skim it off. Groundwater remediation is a lot more difficult, because right now the only standard practice is pump and treat. And I have to think that with how prolific this type of contamination is right now, there's people working on technologies to remediate, but right now we're just kind of at that pump and treat. Maybe at some point in the future we could put in some sort of filtration or sequestration media in a lens intercepting the contamination plume, but that's all hypothetical, and it would require years and years of engineering studies before anything would be permitted by the MPCA.
And so years and years, so, and thank you for answering, because it sounds like somebody, and I tend to agree with you, because of the prevalence of PFAS, not just here, but all over, that somebody ought to be working at. The irony is that we have a system ourselves. We probably can't run that much water through the system, and even if we did and separated the PFAS from the water, could we put it back in the face of the landfill?
That would be
Questions?
one, I mean, the landfill is the perfect place to sequester PFAS. You know, basically, once it's in the landfill, it's not going anywhere, especially when you treat your leachate on site, as we do. You're treating it, you're putting the PFAS back in the landfill where it gets caught up in the garbage and absorbed by the garbage, and then it basically sits there forevermore. It's a containment unit, probably the best, and we've talked about this on the solid waste level too, as we're a repository for the material. We're not necessarily a point source, so to speak, but we're probably the best place for the PFAS material. So we've had these arguments should PFAS be a hazardous waste? Well, it is hazardous to health and the environment, but at the same time, if you're making it harder to dispose of, the likelihood of disposal, proper disposal, is going to go down. So maybe the landfill is the best place for that type of material.
And I promise I'm not asking anymore. Again, to clarify, is there clay between Northston Lake and the plume?
We believe there's a lens of clay that runs, generally speaking, in that direction. That's why we see the perched water of Northstead Lake. We believe it's spring-fed, but we also believe there is some clay in that general area, which is what's holding, because we see it in a lot of different little pothole lakes. We've got other ones on the property or near the property too. We believe that's all the result of water being perched on the clay, but the fact that there's springs brings out the potential for a groundwater surface water interface.
Kind of lied about the last question. How long would it take at the rate of movement that we have right now to reach Northston Lake? I'm wondering how many years we have to figure out a solution to this.
It's a hard question to answer. I mean, it could potentially be 10, it could potentially be 30, it could potentially never reach there. We just don't have the data yet, and that's what we're gonna work on acquiring, regardless of what happens with the property acquisition. The problem is with the property acquisition, if the county doesn't acquire it, then we have to get in negotiations with landowner or landowners, and it just complicates the process that much more. So this is the next step. I mean, we're not there yet to have all of that information. We know it's off-site, but we need to gather that information, and we're gonna do that regardless of what happens.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So going back, and you were saying, you know, the best thing was keep it in the landfill, but it's out of the landfill, it's moving on now. And as the longer we watch it move out, I'm assuming the costs are gonna keep going up to really mitigate this problem. And we're monitoring the problem, and I think we're not really mitigating the problem the way it sounds. What is, and I hate to even ask this question, to really mitigate that problem, to put it back, what would the
We are going to
rough
do,
estimate be?
so the only mitigation that we know would be that $7 million source relocation. And along with that 7 million, you'd probably be looking at another 7 to 10 million in lost revenue. So that right now is the only thing that we could do, is dig it up and put it on line space to actually curb it at the source. Treatment technology isn't there. You could put in a pump and treat system, you might just be shooting yourself in the foot. You know, you don't know. You could pump millions and millions and millions of gallons and never really achieve the outcome that you're looking for. But we are doing things to mitigate on top of just research. We're going to put final cover over the entirety of the C&D cell next year, which will at least help stop the surface water migration, you know, the rainwater migration into the waste mass, which is what generates your C&D leachate and propagates your plume. So we're going to be doing that. Obviously, there's still going to be some amount of surface water flowing in there, but this will highly limit it. It's the same thing we do with the MSW cells. We're going to put a 40 mil LLDPE cover over top of it and grow grass on top of it. So there'll be basically a big plastic tarp over the whole thing. So that's one thing that we're going to do to help mitigate it. Anything else? Unfortunately, we just need time. That's the point we're at, so.
Yeah, follow up, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in following up on this and looking at going forward is, it's a big guess, which way to go on this whole thing. But you're talking about 6, 7, 8 million plus maybe another 8 million. But we're also looking at, loss of tax property or tax base, buying this $2.5 million property, as well as putting in the wells and the costs connected with that. That's a big first step in just really mitigating the problem. And this can't be just unique to Candioi County neither, that, what kind of funds and grants are there out there for these kind of things that we can really just do it instead of just guessing.
I would say that it is not a unique problem to Candioi County. What is unique is the fact that the parcel's coming up for sale, and that's what prompted this whole discussion. In a lot of cases, if you would have a property owner fight you on corrective action, you would take the property by eminent domain. Nobody wants to do that. You guys don't want to do that. The property owners of the county don't want to see that happening, but if the MPCA says you must, they mean you must, not you must if the property owner agrees. It means that you have to do it. So as far as grants are concerned, there are PFAS grants available. They have been making them available annually. They're smaller amounts. I noticed the city of Wilmer got one recently on their wastewater side. That would be a potential option for us after we get through this initial phase. I think we're gonna be on the hook for this $2.5 million purchase, and then we're gonna be on the hook for about $100,000 in non-invasive study. And that would include the engineering associated with that. And after that, we're gonna have a whole lot more information about what we're looking at. And my opinion right now is this purchase is worth it. Even if you completely discount the whole plume thing, it's worth it. The potential for neighbors, potentially multiple neighbors, that's not something that I'm interested in. That's not something that you guys should be interested in either. I like to run a landfill that's quiet, that people enjoy coming to as much as they possibly can enjoy going to a landfill. I don't like complaints. I don't like any of that. So with neighbors unfortunately comes complaints and comes problems. So.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson and then Commissioner Dale Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm on the Environment and Natural Resources Committee for AMC. And, I represent the county, I guess, on there. And there's other counties that are dealing with that right now. And MPCA just says you got to drill some wells to monitor the situation. And they're going, well, can you help us? And they're like, no.
No.
So they're on the hook. And they've tried to, pass it through AMC, but the rest of the counties just said that isn't our priority. That if a county has to do that sort of situation, to drill monitoring wells, right now there's no money, but the rest of the counties just kind of said, well, that's not our high priority right now. Well, now it is our high priority if we don't purchase this land. I think from the meetings that I've had or discussions I've had in that committee regarding this sort of situation, this is the best way to go about it if we were to purchase it, in my opinion, because it looks like we're kicking the can down the road, but we're also saving a lot of headache dealing with neighboring properties. You can get a neighbor that won't cooperate, and then we have to go through eminent domain and all kinds of, a lot of paperwork and a lot of expense. So I just think it's a good idea. I don't like spending money, but this year I think we're saving in the long term, and then we can kind of get ahead of the situation and see what is going on with the groundwater, and hopefully it comes to the surface and it gets digested by the plants or evaporates out.
Commissioner Dale Anderson.
I just want to thank you guys for the work that you've done putting this all together. It's interesting. I talked to a couple counties just through different avenues that I have, and I know of 2 different counties that are fighting this PFAS thing, and they're just in their leachate. So, I mean, we've already accomplished trying to get that part handled ourselves. So I think that's a great thing. But I mean, they're bringing it and having to haul it all the way to the cities, and then it just gets diluted down enough so they can dump it in the Mississippi. And I mean, at least we're putting an effort into trying to find a way to keep that leachate under control and handle it ourselves. So I totally agree with Dwayne. I think, if we can see that this isn't moving or it actually at some point stops or we figure out how to get it out, we can always sell that land off at that time. But in any situation, if you want to control your destiny, you control your neighborhood. So I think that's where we have to look at this right now, is just to have this buffer to handle this, to keep things simple for right now, and hopefully at some point in time, there's another option.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also would like to see us have that property to be able to move forward with this, and knowing that we really have to have some really concrete plans to really mitigate this instead of monitoring this basically going forward. One of my concerns is, though, is the property itself. And $2.5 million is, well, first off, I want to really thank Administrator Baker and Commissioner Gardner and yourself and the individuals involved, as well as the sellers, working together trying to negotiate a price on this. And I know a lot of time and energy went into this, and it's just complicated for people trying to sell something to government. And I appreciate their willingness to take the time and go through these hoops with us as we go forward. But I am concerned looking at the cost of it. And there is a big discrepancy from the tax base that we would lose versus what they're asking price. And we have not had an independent appraisal of the property. And I expect that we want this property really bad. And on the other hand, I think we have to be cautious of the taxpayers' dollars going forward. And trying to find a balance with that. And I really would like to work with that to see if we can possibly find out one way or go back and renegotiate it. Or continue negotiations to see if we can find some middle ground. I think if we both parties work together, we can still come to some kind of a deal, we can move forward. And I would like to see this go back and talk to the sellers about this to see if they could, we could negotiate a lower price.
Commissioner Imdag.
I thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned eminent domain, and in the case of eminent domain, obviously, and Commissioner Berg brought up the appraisal, but appraisals would be required there. But my questions are more related to what do we do with the property once we own it? And especially if there's portions of the property, i.e. the house, that, you know, what are we gonna do with a house, a pretty valuable house that's sitting on that property? Perhaps there's some land on the west side of Norston Lake that it's not gonna be needed, you know, because of it's Norston Lake. So we could mitigate some costs there. I'm gonna take a position because I have some, talked to Attorney Baker, that I'm in a kind of a gray area in terms of conflict of interest because of family members that do business with property owners. So I'm trying to ask questions that are very neutral and not advocating one way or the other. When it comes to the vote, I won't be taking part. But we're just trying to do our due diligence here. That's our job. And I think we're probably all in agreement that expanding our boundaries is the right thing to do. It's just there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. And once we make the decision, we probably aren't going to be able to have the opportunity to ask those questions in a forum like this and get the answers. So we're just trying to be diligent and transparent about the actions that the board has taken. So again, thank you and the rest of the staff. But again, to Mr. Berg's comment about appraisal and then what are we gonna do with the property that perhaps is not needed? And I don't know if it's fair to ask you that question or
That's
not.
above my pay grade.
It would be.
I can answer that question if I may. On the tax base, I think that has been brought up a few different times. I did reach out to our assistant assessor, and the total tax for the township only portion would be estimated around $1,500 yearly. The township supervisor had reached out, and so I had our staff call them back, and he was pretty satisfied. He thought the tax would be a lot higher, but it would be about $1,500 that township would lose annually, and that wouldn't go into effect until payable 2027. And so I think we have this picture that, and that's how the valuations, when we talked with Department of Revenue and our assessing staff on how we get to that number, even though the tax value is around $1 million, the payment of taxes is around $10,000, really when you would mesh that all together amongst the township and the valuations, they would lose about $1,500 yearly.
And the school district.
I would assume she lumped all of that in. I would have to clarify that.
Mr. Chair, and the county would, you're talking about the township would lose that
The
money?
township.
Yeah, what about,
Correct. Yeah,
what
it's
about the
just-
county, though?
Right, that would affect it, but probably not as much as we would think.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Berg.
Again, I guess I'd like to kind of restate my concerns, and my suggestion would be is that that I feel uncomfortable supporting this, and I really would like to see negotiations possibly try to continue. Not knowing the other party, if the seller would even be willing to do that. But I'm willing to look at that. I know we're gonna have to pay premium price for this property, but I think we can negotiate this better and give it another shot.
Anyone else? Ryan, let me go back a little bit to the idea of controlling the property. And one of the things that you've listed in here is then we would be essentially eliminating any possibility of irrigation wells and other drinking wells, that type of thing, improperly installed and potentially contaminating the deeper aquifer that lies underneath. Can you speak to that?
Yes, so we don't have control over how wells are installed. The Minnesota Department of Health puts out guidelines for situations like this where you're going through a contaminated aquifer into an uncontaminated aquifer, but that doesn't really restrict people's activities. The major well drillers in the area know of the contamination plume problems, but somebody could punch into that deeper aquifer through the top aquifer and spread the contamination down there just of their own accord, or with a well driller, a family member that does it from somewhere else in the state that isn't aware, and that would not be, we would not be privy to that knowledge. So there is that potential. They have to be installed with the correct BMPs, best management practices, in order to prevent that contamination from spreading from the upper to the lower aquifer.
Thank you. Commissioner Dwayne Anderson.
So I'll just ask this. I know what the answer is already, but I believe we could take to pay for this, we'd take it out of landfill reserves, so it wouldn't impact property taxes.
That is correct, yep.
Okay. I just think
All right.
I think it's something we should,
Yeah, I think
not that
I'm-
we like it, but it wouldn't impact our property taxes.
I think I'm going to be able to weigh in on this as well. I think everyone else has fairly well stated their position. And I think that we don't want to be, and it's almost hateful to say this when you're talking about $2.5 million. But compared to the future potential liabilities, we'd be tripping over dollars, picking up pennies if we were to not acquire this property. And I will certainly be in favor of moving forward with the transaction. Does anyone else have any questions for Ryan? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You bet. All right, does anyone else have anything that they wish to say on this matter before we consider any motions?
If I could
Go
have a
ahead.
few comments. In speaking with the realtors, there was some comparables that they went off and to figure this asking price. And I did clarify if the comparables were within Candioi County, and they their answer was yes. So the asking price was the comparables and what they came up with the realtors. And so that's where, those conversations started. To answer Commissioner Imdike's questions on what would be the purpose of this house with the property? Big question, really big question. That's something I think I have been talking with Gary. We are coming up with possible solutions. But the biggest why that we are asking for, consideration of this acquisition is because of the land. And I think Ryan made that very clear today. It's, in a sense, kicking the can down the road. I would agree. Kicking the can down the road in the sense that we need to find out more about the contamination and the plume. And that's the scientist, I believe, in Ryan, that we need to gather that information. So to a degree, yeah, we're kicking that can down the road to buy us time to find out more of that information. When we look at the parcels, we would find out that information and then provide a report to the board in sense of, to the degree of, do we need all of this property anymore? I think there's a lot of what if then, what if why? And so this is a big decision of the board today. I don't discredit that at all. But I do give a lot of credit to Gary and Ryan, specifically Ryan, to speak to this level today. And to feel confident in bringing this forth to the county board for a decision. So I respect all of your questions. We appreciate all of them. Keep them coming, but we do feel that we have answered those questions today in hopes that there is a sense of comfort to make a board decision based off this purchase agreement.
Commissioner Dale Anderson.
Well, I guess the one thing that just keeps popping in my mind, and this discussion was brought up way back when there was another project that was a little contentious in the area. But we already know that what happened with the northwest plume, that's moving, and we know that there's problems out there. So, I mean, my thought is, why not try and have some control over what you're doing on the south one before that gets to be a huge problem? My concern is, and Corky, I understand what you're saying, but there hasn't been the concern about the northwest one, and I'm more concerned about that one than this one. So I think that we have to look at this northwest one a little bit better too if we're going to worry about what's going on. That's where I kind of get a little bit more nervous. But I think this is a great opportunity to give us a few years or whatever it takes to try and work on this and figure it out. And then if we don't need that land, or if there's parts that we can sell off, or whatever we can do at that point in time, we have options. But if we don't do something today, we don't have options.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go back if we can go back into negotiations, if we could save 100,000 here or 100,000 there, I think that's significant. And I think it's worth an effort to send it back and continue negotiations and see what you can come up with. But I would like to, I'm not done, Mr. Chair, if you would, please. But also, I think it's important that we do something with this, and no doubt about it. And there's a lot of work and thought from everybody. And I would like to see us get this property as well. I am getting the impression, and I'd like some correction if I'm wrong, that there's a bigger concern about this area right now than the other area from the point of view that's a little bit closer to some of the lakes and so forth than Hawk Creek. But they're both important. And I think my emphasis, as I stated, is we look at mitigating the problem as quickly as and that could be. And I know quickly with government is not going to be overnight, but we head that direction. But this property will help give us a little bit of time to get there. But I still think there's it's a good idea of taxpayers' dollars that we continue negotiations for possibly a lower price or to get a independent appraisal. And I think if we can negotiate with the sellers, and if they're willing to do this, sit down with us, we can come up with something that the board would be happy with.
I'm going to ask the administrator, There was a negotiation that did take place. There was, the property was listed at what previously?
2.8.
2.8 million. So this is a $300,000 reduction reflected in this purchase agreement, yes?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right. Does anyone need any more time, information? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we purchase this property at the negotiated price.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Well, I've stated my situation, where I'm coming from, that I can't support that at this point, and I'd like to see us say no, and we'd go back and talk to the seller about this and see if we can come down with a lower price and report back to us.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson.
I'll just say what I said before is other counties have been dealing with this, and when the MPCA says to drill 32 wells, you will drill 32 wells. If they say you drill 40, you'll drill 40. And this year, it buys us time, and I think we will regret it if we do not purchase it.
Just a follow-up question. If they say that, how much would that cost us then?
A lot.
Would it, do you think it'd be?
Wells aren't cheap.
do you thi- Well, we're
And
gonna do
then
the wells
And then there's the
anyway.
monitoring.
But we're gonna do the wells
Pump it
anyway.
out.
We're gonna be doing the wells.
Not as many as 32, not even close.
Well, but at that point, then the problem's gotten worse, yes.
That's because it went off-site.
Yeah.
And then they have to negotiate with adjoining properties. It gets very expensive very quick.
More than 2.5 million?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Do I recall that in the presentation, and Ryan, I'm going to ask you to come back up again, I apologize. Do I recall that you had, that you guys had pegged just known numbers, potential liability in the neighborhood of $11.4 million? What was, remind me where that figure came from.
Let's just start with what exactly we know. We know the purchase price is 2.5 million. We know that if we don't acquire the property, we're gonna be on the hook for 4.4 million in investigation. That would be doing the rotosonic boring on a grid, groundwater sampling at 5-foot intervals. And as I stated before, it would take probably 2 years to complete. So that right there completely negates the cost of your property purchase. In lieu of this rotosonic testing that we would do like we did on the Northwest Plume, we're proposing to do what's called an NMR, which is a nuclear magnetic resonance. It's basically like an MRI for the ground. It'll give us groundwater information down to 400 feet below ground surface. It's not as accurate, it's not as precise, it doesn't give us all the information we need as far as how the contaminants move within the groundwater, but it tells us where the groundwater is going, which is an important piece for our initial investigations. So that's only $100,000 to do that study. So right now, what we're planning on would be the 2.5 plus $100,000 study as opposed to the 4.4 million if we did not acquire the property. So that right there offsets your cost. And then the well question that came up, each well is about $35,000 to install. And it costs us $3,000 a year in monitoring for every well that we put in. So that's what we would be on the hook for. Right, what we're proposing is to abandon 2 wells that are on the south portion of the current property and move 2 new wells further south on the proposed property acquisition. So it would be trading 2 for 2. Our annual monitoring costs would not increase. All we'd be on the hook for is the install cost for these 2 new wells. And we would locate those wells based on the information that we gathered from that NMR survey. So basically, you're on the hook for $70,000 and well install there.
Commissioner Berg.
Yeah, it sounds like we're on the hook on many different ways on this
We
thing.
are, yeah.
That's why it's such a tough decision. But by staying on the hook, then, if it continued to go forward, we would have a potential for additional expenses, which we are looking at, we would have anyway in mitigating the problem.
Mitigation costs, we haven't even considered that.
Yeah,
We're
but I
simply
think we have
talking
to.
about exploration costs right now and the depth of exploration that we would need to do. If the plume is off-site, if it's outside of our groundwater compliance boundary, we need to get much more granular because of the potential for impact to human health and the environment. Think of, think of our groundwater compliance boundary as a big umbrella that covers the site, that protects us. So if we can extend that boundary, if we can make that umbrella bigger, that shields us from that liability. Once it goes off-site, and like it did with the Northwest plume, and that's where all these numbers come from. These are just inflation adjusted from the actual work that went into that Northwest plume. That's been 30 years in the making since we started delineating that plume. We put 30 years and $4.4 million adjusted into the research that we've done, and that doesn't even account for the monitoring costs, the ongoing monitoring costs.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ryan before we send him back to his seat? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the purchase as presented. Any further discussion? All right, is everybody ready to vote on this? All right, then all in favor of the motion as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Let the record reflect that I'm going to abstain from voting, or have abstained from voting.
We have 3 ayes, 1 nay, 1 abstention. The motion passes. Thank you. All right, and let's take a 5-minute recess.
IT, are you ready?
The Candioi County Board of Commissioners is back in session. At this time, we are at administrative updates, appointments, calendars, and committee reports. One item we do have is a request for a letter of support for the Glacial Lakes Trail Extension. And this is a funding application that's going into the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources. And Commissioner Imdek, you've been involved in this. Do you have a few words that you'd like to say in regard to this topic?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the board considering this letter of support. We've talked to, and the trail that we're talking about is from Sibley State Park into New London to complete what they call the extension. About 4 years ago, they completed the trail through Sibley State Park. They stopped at Highway 71. In 2026, the DNR will have enough funding to go from Sibley State Park to about the Crow River, and then they'll have to stop. The remaining portion of the trail will take about $4 million to complete. And the DNR has put in a request, as you said, the Legislative Citizens Committee on Minnesota Resources, many of you know it as LCCMR, to get a grant for the funding. So they made the first cut. Last week was the presentations by anybody who applied for funds through LCCMR to present their, basically to defend their thesis, if you will, if you were in college doing a master's degree. And then July 18th, they will be making the decision. So these letters of support, I talked to Senator Andrew Lang, and he's been kind of guiding us through making sure that we get the right letters from all the right parties. So appreciate the county doing that.
All right, very good.
Considering it, we haven't done it yet.
Thank you. So I'll just, from the letter itself, it says, tourism is the second largest economic driver in Candioi County, accounting for over 154 million in visitor spending and supporting nearly 1,300 jobs following the ag sector. And the extension would strengthen our regional economy by enhancing recreational opportunities, and it would provide residents and visitors with expanded access to safe, healthy, and friendly, environmentally friendly transportation and recreation options. So, would you care to move the?
Yes, I would like to move that. Thank you.
Very good. And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion?
In reviewing the letter, I would just recommend that we don't need to all sign it, but it be a letter from the Board of Commissioners of Candioi County.
Okay. That sounds fine. And any other questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor of forwarding this letter signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Calendars, updates from the administrator.
Other than just now, really the next 2 weeks, I'll be working and focusing on the budget for 2026.
All right. And as everybody can read here, but we'll note the July 15th board meeting is moved to July 17th at 9 a.m. to accommodate some travel plans. July 17th, that previously scheduled Health and Human Services work session has been canceled, and we will put it on our calendars for August 19th to have a budget work session following the board meeting at that time. Do any of the commissioners have anything that they absolutely must report out in regards to the last meetings the last couple of weeks? All right, I think everybody's schedules have been kind of in that summer mode, and I'm sure we'll be getting a little more. Commissioner Imdek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would want to report that as you and I both attended the Association of Minnesota Counties board meeting a week ago, last Friday, that AMC is working diligently. Probably, they're probably going to lose this one, but Julie Ring and 2 commissioners went to Washington DC to argue our plight regarding the federal tax bill, which is gonna have significant impacts on counties' levies. And then, so they're working on our behalf as they did at the state level. And then from the Mid-Minnesota Development Commission, which I sit on, they too are navigating all the federal cuts like many of us are. And so waiting to see how all of this is gonna take place.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just say one thing, with all the rains and stuff, people that are on the lakes, enjoy the lakes for the upcoming 4th of July. But also remember that with the high water levels, that boats will create a little bit of a wake and you'll have wave action. I know there's wind that does that naturally, but you don't need to add to it. So just be considerate of people on shore and the shoreline, that you kind of slow down so that you don't cause big wakes when you're closer to shore.
I would just add, from before I started talking, I just saw a news break that the Senate did pass the tax bill, but now we'll have to go back to the House for reconciliation between the 2 versions that they have.
Thank you for that, and I'll just add on to Dwayne's, please, if you're out on the water, wear your life jackets and don't drink and operate a boat. I know that's tough over the 4th of July, but we'll see what happens. All right, does anybody have anything else? All right, then we will adjourn the regular meeting of the Candido High County Board of Commissioners, and we will go immediately into a work session, and this is to receive the results of the space study analysis by Wold Architects and Engineers. With that, the regular board meeting is adjourned.